Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special birthday edition of Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk presented by Forefathers Organics. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, alongside my co-host, Ajay Cybulski. It's his birthday today, everybody, 24 years old. AJ celebrating his beautiful day of birth here for the Batavia Daily and Livingston County News, where each week we'll discuss Buffalo's favorite football team, along with all the comings and goings from Orchard Park, thanks to our friends at Forefathers Organics in Dansville.
Unlock the power of nature with Forefathers Organics, your premium CBD store. We offer the highest quality CBD and hemp products to liberate your mind, body, and soul, helping you live happy and free. Our mission is driven by excellence and transparency using cutting-edge scientific methods to combat stress and target issues at their source. From potent ingestible CBD to soothing topicals, all our products are USDA certified organic. Discover all natural wellness from farm to table. Visit forefathersorganics.com for more information.
All right, AJ, 24 years of age. How does it feel? Your day of birth here today, October 10th, 2024, your 34th year on the earth. Just 24th.
Yeah, it's my Kobe year, which, Kobe was one of my favorite players growing up. So I'm a big fan of Kobe, so 24 years old. It's pretty cool. William Mitchell, comments your Libra season. Happy birthday. Appreciate that, William. Thank you for the comment. But, yeah, so enjoying some Mexican food tonight, some DA Taste Taco up in Buffalo, and then headed to the Sabres home opener. So it's either going to be a really nice birthday night or they're going to drop to 0-3 here. So the Sabres need to get on the board with a W tonight. Lindy Ruff's debut. I actually pulled out a Lindy Ruff signed jacket from the closet this morning. Didn't bring it with me because I just didn't want to put it on. But it's pretty cool stuff that I was able to find a Lindy Ruff signed jacket today. It was just random looking through my closet for this jacket I have on here and found a Lindy Ruff signed jacket. So might mean more if the Sabres can figure it out here this season.
Yeah, you certainly had a good start to the birthday. Your first time at Bills practice here at One Bills Drive, but you're absolutely right. The Sabres could bring all the joy crashing down later on tonight. Let's just hope for a competitive game. They didn't look so hot in Prague. Hopefully they're a little bit better here stateside. We did ask Dion Dawkins about the Sabres game during his press availability. He seemed surprised that the Sabres were playing tonight, but once he heard, he was on the phone trying to mooch off teammate Greg Rousseau for some tickets in the suite. I think we're going to see Dion there perhaps tonight. And we also asked him what he thinks the Sabres goal song should be. The Sabres deciding on a team-wide goal song this season, and Dion had a couple of recommendations and a dance to go along with it. You can check that video out on my X account. Also on X, YouTube, anywhere, be sure to comment. We love comments throughout the show. Bring your questions or, like I just said, comments, anything that you would like to provide throughout the show. We'll be sure to share those, but we can't see them unless you're following us on X or watching on YouTube or Facebook. So be sure to do those things. Also, like, share, and subscribe to the pod as we are here at One Bills Drive. AJ, your first experience taking in a Buffalo Bills practice, just your takeaways from what I'm sure you had been looking forward to since you took the job at the Batavia Daily News.
Yeah, they went through their thing, went through their ritual. Not a lot of media availability, but like you said, you get to see injuries, get some updates there, see kind of where the team sits at in terms of the injury front. And again, there's always content going around. Bills fans love the content from practices. So yeah, there was a lot of cool things. It was cool to obviously go in the field house after the game or after the practice and look around and take it all in. But yeah, the turf, I mentioned to you when we were walking in, the turf in there is very soft, almost pillow-like walk on that turf. Yeah, plush. So yeah, it was cool. Another cool, experience for me. And again, it was a little, I guess, a birthday present from you to me here on my birthday. A nice little, my first Bills practice up to this point.
I think it just kind of worked out that way. We were eyeing this week all along as kind of the week you'd fit into practices here. So many responsibilities at the Daily News outside of just our Bills coverage. So wanted to make sure you were ingratiated with that this fall season. And now here we are, and it just happened to fall on a perfect day, your birthday, and a beautiful day here in Orchard Park. A little bit chilly as we do this podcast outside, but nothing that we can't get through. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of this podcast, AJ. We'll start with the injuries, and boy, are there a lot of them to update from today's practice. Some good, some bad. We'll start with Curtis Samuel's return to practice, 1-day absence due to a foot-toe injury. He was nursing that turf toe throughout the preseason. He returned in time for the regular season, has played in every game, but was injured during the Texans game, forced out of practice on Wednesday. He did return on Thursday. He was marked as a limited participant on the Bills injury report, which I'll go through right now. Josh Allen listed on the injury report with a left hand and ankle injury. He was full. Terrell Bernard removed the red non-contact jersey. More on him later. He was full with a pectoral. James Cook, more on him later as well, did not practice with a toe injury. Darrington Evans, full with a hamstring as he returns from the injured reserve. Reed Ferguson marked with an elbow injury, but he was a full participant. Matt Collins, Austin Johnson, both limited with shoulder and oblique injuries, respectively, while Taron Johnson, a big day for him, removing the red non-contact jersey for the first time since returning to practice since that week 1 injury he suffered against the Arizona Cardinals. So a big step in his progression. Daquan Jones, a full participant with a shoulder injury. Quentin Morris, full participant with a shoulder injury. Ed Oliver missed practice once again with a hamstring injury. He missed the game against the Texans, trending toward missing Monday's game as well. More on him later. Taylor Rapp continues to be back from concussion protocol, while Samuel, who I mentioned, the toe injury. Khalil Shakir still out with the ankle injury. And then Javon Solomon and Mitchell Trubisky, both full participants with their respective injuries. But let's start with Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins and Khalil Shakir, AJ, the wide receiver group. You get Samuel back, but Shakir still not practicing, and Hollins still in that red non-contact jersey. So some positive news for Samuel, but as the days go on here, it's looking more and more like Khalil Shakir might miss his second straight game.
Yeah, and going up against the Jets team, looking ahead a little bit, relative to the injuries that we're talking about right now, I think Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir are so important going up against the Jets defense that loves to play man coverage, and they have DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, and they need separators. And I know that you could say Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir aren't the greatest separators, but if you actually look at ESPN Next Gen stats, they're actually both in the top 25 in terms of separation on the season. So they actually are separating, which is quite interesting because there's a lot of narratives out there that the Bills wide receiving group, it really isn't separating that well, which to an extent, yes, Mac Hollins has had his troubles. Marcos Valdez-Scantling's had his obvious problems, but Curtis Samuel just really hasn't gotten much opportunity down the field. And it seems like that's something that Joe Brady needs to work on here moving forward. But good to see Curtis Samuel returning from that toe injury, foot injury, whatever they kind of said it was both. So that both injury there for Curtis, but and then the other injury to Khalil Shakir. I mean, if they are without him on Monday night, that's a huge loss, Alex. We both know that he's their wide receiver one. They're kind of their alpha. Doesn't act like an alpha, but he is kind of the guy that stood out in terms of the receiving room here this far, and he's really important for what they do offensively. He can win anywhere. He's got great yards after the catch ability, which the Bills have really tried to focus on. He's great in the short passing game. He can also spread you out. So it would be, a big loss if Khalil Shakir can't go, because you saw what the offense looked like last week. And I'm not saying that's all because of Khalil Shakir. There was a lot of reasons why the offense struggled, but one of them being his absence. So they hopefully they can get him back here at some point. But if they don't, next man up mentality.
Yeah, Shakir was doing a bit more than he did on Wednesday. Wednesday, just doing some light jogging and maybe some agility work with athletic trainers off to the side. Today, he was testing that ankle, not in positional drills or with other teammates, but they brought Mike White over briefly, and he threw a couple of passes to him just to allow Shakir to test that ankle upon his release from the line of scrimmage. So at least he's testing it and pushing it to see if he can return on Monday. So I wouldn't rule him out quite yet, but the more days he misses here, obviously the less chance that we'll see him on Monday. Mac Hollins, like I said, still in that red non-contact jersey. If Hollins can't go, if Shakir can't go, you already saw Tyrell Shavers pulled up to the 53-man roster for the last game. Who would you like to see maybe the next man up if the Bills need to pull somebody else off the practice squad? I know for my money, KJ Hamler, I liked him early during the preseason. Didn't have a great training camp. I kind of soured on him a little bit, but his speed, his gadget type ability, and really, I can just say that speed, that brings an element that the Bills don't really have right now.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was going to say. I would go with KJ Hamler as well. Again, former second-round picks, been in this league before, has had some productions, dealt with injuries, had a solid training camp, has really not done much, obviously, in the regular season, has not had the opportunity to. But, again, this Monday night could be an opportunity for him. So we'll see what happens with what they do if Shakir's out and they decide to bring up Hamler. But you're right. He brings an element of speed. He can stretch out the defense. And in the Bills right now, the reason I think they're struggling offensively, and it's pretty apparent, is that, one, the offensive line is not as good as it was the first 3 weeks. So they're dealing with issues. And also they're facing the most man coverage in the league. And Allen's having trouble finding guys open. And then, that allows the defenses to kind of get more pressure and also play closer to the line of scrimmage. So because there's no really...
And that's surprising because he dominated man coverage in week 3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But you're absolutely right. These last 2 weeks, it has not been the same, particularly last week. He really struggled against man coverage.
Yeah, so I think defenses are kind of finding the script in the Bills until they have an answer, until they can beat teams down the field at that third level and actually stretch out the defense. That's how defenses are going to key on them. Play man coverage, send pressure. You can also, a lot of teams have been winning with 4 as well. I know the Texans have a really good defensive line, but so do the Jets. Will McDonald's playing really well. Obviously, Quinnen Williams over there. Hassan Reddick, who knows where he is, but if what
Japan,
could be, Japan. But what could be with him too? I mean, that would have been a lethal defensive line if he was playing. So it's definitely, there's a lot going into it, but I think KJ Hamler would obviously help stretch the field and maybe a potential deep shot. MVS hasn't really been much of anything up to this point.
John Robert mentions another factor that's weighed into the Bills' offensive struggles, or at least a perceived factor, is their lesser use of motion over the past 2 weeks. I don't think it's as drastic of a decrease as people have imagined, but certainly they have not used as much as you saw, particularly during weeks 2 and 3. And I think that's also hampered their ability these past 2 weeks. And another thing, teams are spying Josh Allen more often, I think, this year than you've seen in the past. And that's led to some defenses playing that man coverage because it's a little bit more difficult to spy in zone coverage. You leave areas of the field wide open, but using that man coverage, that allows you to spy the quarterback. And I think that is what has been leading to the increase in man coverage from some of the opponents. And the Bills just have yet to figure that out. More on Josh Allen later, but another key injury for the Bills as James Cook remains out, as I said earlier when I went through the injury report. When he went down during that Texans game, I don't think many people took notice, but upon the replay shown by Thigh Doctor, I think is the one who cut it out real nice on X, and you can really see I think it was his left foot banging against the turf, and he hasn't been out there at practice these past 2 days, just working lightly off to the side with athletic trainers. And I think the way that the Bills deal with injuries, they typically like to go slowly, especially with a player of James Cook's position. You need that foot, that cutting ability. It's really not just straightforward movement that you're concerned with. So I think you might see Cook out this weekend, next week, Monday, against the New York Jets. And a lot of people are wondering, AJ, as Celts fan in the dark mentions, the people want to know if Cook sits, who's the better fantasy start, Ray Davis or Ty Johnson? And I think for my money, it's clearly Ty Johnson. Not only has he been more productive throughout the first 5 weeks of the season, Ray Davis didn't get a carry last week. So once Cook went out late in that game, you saw Ty Johnson kind of take over for Cook. And with Ray Davis not receiving a single carry last week against the Texans, I think for sure the best bet is Ty Johnson. But at the same time, maybe they like Ty Johnson in the role he's in. I know that they've said that before with players where they like to keep players in their role, and maybe you bring Ray Davis in as the starter. But I think overall you're going to see Ty Johnson used more heavily if James Cook is to miss Monday's game against the Jets.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Ty Johnson's a veteran. You've seen more snaps from him the last couple of weeks. And I think he brings something, again, pass protection wise. But so if I had to put, if I was given fantasy advice, I'd say Ty Johnson. But I think there is a path for Ray Davis as a pass catcher and a runner to kind of not be unleashed, but have an opportunity in this game to kind of produce for this offense. I think they need that. They're still lacking it. And it's, it's been a struggle for the Bills to kind of find a complementary back with, going back to Singletary. Zach Moss kind of struggled. They parted ways with him and Latavius Murray. And I felt like this year they had some answers with what Ty Johnson showed at points last year in a minimal role, and with the drafting of Ray Davis. But it's really been kind of a lackluster start for Ray Davis as a rookie, a guy that you thought at 24 years old was going to come right in. He produced at every single college he went to, and it's not really, working at the NFL level right now for him. So I think with more opportunity, there's potential for Ray Davis. But if I were to go right now, I think Ty Johnson just makes more sense. He knows the system. It also could be a potential revenge game, Ty Johnson revenge game. He was a former Jet at one point. So I think there is some opportunity for both these guys to succeed. But I mean, you can't really lessen the loss. Like we said about James Cook, if he's out, if he's not in this game, it's going to be 13-10 ball game at MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, a lot of Bills fans, and especially the Ray Davis hive, buzzing today as James Cook misses his second straight practice. But I think you look no further than Ray Davis not getting a carry against the Texans. But if you are to look further, Davis averaging 2.9 yards per carry on the season, while Johnson is above 4 at 4.2. So I think the choice is clear here. Johnson, the more capable player, the more productive player at this stage of both players' career. If you're going to go with one, I would make it Ty Johnson. Moving on, another injury, 2 more to get to. Ed Oliver remains out at practice. Dwayne Carter had a big game this last week. Daquan Jones improved his production. That would be a big loss if you're to be without Ed Oliver once again. I think that goes without saying. He's not having his best season by any means, but what he provides up front and what he's able to limit in terms of drawing that attention from opposing offenses, making sure that you put a double team on him once in a while. I think that can create opportunities for other people. And Dwayne Carter, while he had a big game, he's not going to attract the double teams that Ed Oliver is inside.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that defensive.
AJ, I think your audio switched to your microphone from your AirPods. If you could switch it back here, but certainly, while I like Dwayne Carter and I like his potential, Ed Oliver, what he's produced in this league, certainly more gravitas on that interior defensive line.
Yeah, I think here on my end it still says the streaming mic, so I think I'm good. Do I sound better?
You sound better now. You were just loud there for a second.
Okay. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see with this defensive line and what they do. Dwayne Carter, again, he's a veteran, not a veteran, a guy that came into the league as kind of a veteran at the college level, and he's produced in a sense. He had a big tackle for loss on a screen pass against Houston, and late in that Baltimore game also showed some promise. So it'll be interesting to see how this defensive line shakes out and who's really going to step up. I think, again, Austin Johnson's still dealing with that oblique injury, and like you mentioned, Ed Oliver, it's not really looking that good for him right now at this point, suffering that hamstring injury late last week. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and he was out there at practice, not participating. He was out there in a sweatshirt. I did not see him, but Dom Tibbetts of WKBW got a video, and then we saw him walking in the field house after practice. So he's out there with his teammates, but I think it could be a second straight week missed for Ed Oliver. And you mentioned Austin Johnson. I think he's going to play a big factor as well. They played Daquan Jones and Dwayne Carter pretty heavy snap share, if I recall correctly. If there's any way that you could find that, AJ. But if I recall, they played a pretty heavy snap share. It would be certainly a boon for the Bills to get somebody back on the inside. Austin Johnson, a veteran player, a player you brought in through free agency, hoping to make an impact. And him being injured at the same time as Ed Oliver, certainly a bad situation on the inside. It would be big to get him back this week. Were you able to find his snaps by any chance? Those snaps?
What you're talking about last week?
Yeah, last week with Jones and Carter.
So Daquan Jones played 35 snaps for 51% of the snap share, and Dwayne Carter played 36 of the snaps for a 53% snap share.
Yeah, I think that's a little high. I'd have to go back and check, but especially for Carter, I'm not sure they'd like him that high. I think they'd like to do a little bit more mixing and matching, but obviously as depleted as they were, they had to leave Jones and Carter on the field more often than not. The last couple of injuries to deal with, out of the red non-contact jersey, Taron Johnson, the first time since that injury in week 1, while Terrell Bernard out of the red non-contact jersey that he wore on Wednesday. Bernard appears good to go for Monday. Johnson still up in the air, but if you were to ask me to put my bet on it, AJ, I'd bet on Taron Johnson returning against the Jets on Monday night.
Yeah, that'd be huge for this defense. A captain, part of the probably captain committee. I don't know who's a part of it, but he's been a veteran for so long, and he was asked about his leadership all training camp and all offseason, and his presence out there on the field, his physicality, he could set the tone. He's very good in coverage, very handsy. Again, everything you really want in a typical slot corner, he can do, and he can defend the run well too. Although people think that, a nickel cornerback is kind of a liability against the run, he's definitely one of the best at it in terms of defending the run in the league. So if you can add Taron Johnson back, that'd be huge for this defense and just his overall play. An All-Pro in 2023. And we haven't seen him since week 1, which is actually crazy to think about. Again, gives kudos to Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich and what they've been able to do defensively for this team with all these losses. Matt Milano being one of those players, Taron Johnson out. They've dealt with now Ed Oliver going down. So really at every level, Von Miller suspended. Every level of this defense, they've really dealt with some sort of injury or suspension in some way to a key player at every level of the defense. So credit to Babich and McDermott, but it'll be huge for Taron Johnson to be back out there.
All right, did I forget anything in terms of the injuries? Samuel set to return. Holland still in the red non-contact. James Cook and Khalil Shakir and Ed Oliver. I think I'd be surprised if any of those 3 players played. Taron Johnson and Terrell Bernard trending. Obviously, Bernard set to play, but Taron Johnson trending toward a return as well.
Yeah, I think John Robert here in the comments says, worst comes to worst, Smoot will play inside. I think that's unique because I look here at or not unique, that should say interesting. I think that's interesting because last week he did have 40 snaps for 59% of the snap share. So I don't know where he lined up. If it was, it probably was a mixture because he has that versatility. Yeah. So, but that is unique. That is interesting that they're playing DeJuan Smoot at a 59% snap share in one of the first weeks he's returned from injury because he had dealt with that injury in the first few weeks of the season. So it's he's another guy that plays into that mix and that defensive tackle rotational role as well that we shouldn't forget about there.
Yeah, played really well, I thought, against the Texans as well. Had that forced fumble that Dorian Williams fell on and had some other pressures as well. I was impressed with Smoot. Before we get too deep into this podcast, I think we already have gotten a little too deep. I forgot to do it, but let's thank our sponsor, Forefathers Organics in Dansville. At Forefathers Organics, their mission is to liberate, educate, and innovate with the highest quality CBD and hemp-derived products for your mind, body, and soul so you can live happy and free. Visit them at 87 Franklin Street in Dansville, online at forefathersorganics.com, or call them at 585-335-2223 to learn more about the products they offer. All right, AJ, let's talk about the Bills matchup with the Jets, beginning with how can the Bills offense get going this week? If you're without Cook and Shakir, it's obviously going to be tough to do so. It was a slow go last week against the Texans, and you had Cook for the majority of that game. And you mentioned it earlier, something needs to open up down the field, and that all starts with Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid has been a major disappointment for the Bills this year. I know a lot of quote-unquote gravity being pushed his way in terms of opposing defenses, paying a lot of attention to him, sending extra defenders his way, chipping him at the line, so on and so forth. But a player drafted in the first round, a player that you had such high expectations for, and a player that was supposed to be this elite pass-catching tight end, I just simply have not seen it. Not only his ability to get open, but his ability to haul in passes. He's dropped, I think, 2 or 3 balls on the year already. That ball along the sideline that the Bills didn't challenge. He dropped another ball in the Texans game and another ball the week before. So not only has he not been able to attack down the field, he's been dropping passes that have been in his hands.
Yeah, I think kind of going hand in hand, I think it's going to be important for someone else to show up in order for Dalton Kincaid to have success in a way. So I think that's going to be the key. It's got to be a Matt Collins or a Curtis Samuel or someone to take that attention off of a Dalton Kincaid so he can kind of, I should say he like you mentioned, he's had opportunity, right? He has not looked like the player that they thought he was going to be at this point in the second year with big shoes to fill with the losses. And he was supposed to be that tight end one, wide receiver one-ish kind of player, right? And you haven't seen that. But I think this Bills offense right now is just too predictable. And it's funny because we talk about Joe Brady's creativity and this pre-snap motion. And I think they need to increase the usage of play action, right? I think that's a start. The pre-snap motions obviously got to, increase like we talked about earlier in this pod. And I think they have to protect Josh Allen. And then the 2 last things is Josh Allen needs to play better because he's just not played that great in my opinion. He's a top 2 quarterback in the league. He should not be playing at this level. This does not happen to the elite of the elites. So that's one. And then 2, is also the receivers getting open and separating and have building that chemistry and connecting with each other. We need to see more of everybody. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, if he does play, Curtis Samuel, if he does play. And again, we'll see what comes out of the backfield. But overall, we need to see a lot more from everybody on this offense, Joe Brady included, and I think that will propel them to where they want to get to, and kind of respond to what defenses are throwing at them right now.
Yeah, it's kind of been an identity crisis for Joe Brady early in the season. You saw what he wanted to do the first 3 weeks with the motion, the short passing game, this, that, and the other thing, and it's really gone by the wayside the last 2 weeks, and I'm not sure if you can lay all of the fault at Joe Brady's feet because Josh Allen has not played very well the last 2 weeks either, and that leads me to my next question. Is Josh Allen okay? He's had his head whipped back against the Ravens. His head bounced off the turf against the Texans. He was asked about his trip to the Blue Medical Tent against the Texans, really downplayed it, almost trying to skirt over the question. It was really an odd response from him in terms of he went into the tent, he was cleared to play. That's all I know. Really a weird situation, but he's been off. Something's been off with Allen since that Ravens game, and just not sure if it's simply poor play or just a bad stretch for him, or if there's something more to it. He's been banged up throughout the season. His hand injury, his back injury, he's listed with an ankle injury now. As I mentioned, his head bouncing off the turf. He's just seemed out of sorts. Do we think Josh Allen is okay right now? I think there certainly is some concern with that, especially at the end of the game. Some of the decisions he was making had players open over the middle, missing them, instead going deep. Just some, maybe not uncharacteristic, but some questionable decisions from Josh Allen in crunch time, and that's usually when he thrives.
Yeah, and it's funny because we discussed it on the pregame show, and I kind of talked about, I was worried that Josh Allen was going to try and play hero ball and, going up against Diggs and the meaning of the game and trying to force feed the issue. And you saw exactly that, right, at the end of that game, where he had guys open on that play where he tried to feed the ball to Matt Collins down the sideline, which he could not connect with. The chemistry is just not there right now with them two. And there were players wide open underneath for a 5-6 yard game. You get the completion, you stop the Texans have to use a timeout. So I think Josh Allen needs to go back to just, kind of relaxing. I think he went a little bit too low on the roller coaster when he was playing. I think he was just, again, his confidence. 9 completions in a game. He could never get in a rhythm, right? There's no rhythm to his game, completing 30% of the passes. So it's tough to win like that in this league with a quarterback that completes 9 passes. So I think he's okay. He's going to learn from this. He's working with a whole new system. It's his third offensive coordinator with the Bills. He's learning again with kind of Joe Brady's offense and learning along the way. So he's going to be okay. He still has all the talent in the world, but if he doesn't figure it out, I think there can be questions, and I think there should be some criticism of Josh Allen moving forward if he's not able to, especially this season when, they did lose a lot of key pieces, but this AFC East, like we've talked about several times, Alex, it's just not that good. So if Josh Allen should be able and is good enough and has proven he's good enough to take this team to at least an AFC East title, and that should be the kind of thought process right now.
Yeah, so much talk about the pass catchers and their inability to separate, their inability to haul in catches, and so much talk about Joe Brady and how he's calling the offense. The offensive line has been poor the past 2 weeks, and that's also led to some dismal play from Josh Allen. The offensive line started the season red hot. We've mentioned it time and again, and they've really fallen off. Josh Allen is number 1 in true scramble rate in the NFL. He's been on the move for 24% of his dropbacks. The run blocking has been good for the Bills throughout the year, but the pass blocking has been an issue, particularly the past 2 weeks. Spencer Brown showing some issues, and Osiris Torrance struggling really throughout the year in pass blocking. I think one of the things you're missing up front is Mitch Morse at this time. Mitch Morse was so good at calling out the signals, getting everybody lined up, calling out the protections, and helping Josh Allen in that process. This year, I think a lot more has fallen on Josh Allen because of Connor McGovern's introduction as the team's new center. And I'm not saying McGovern's done a poor job, but I think when you put more on a quarterback's plate, that causes them to go through more in their mind. And you see sometimes on these plays, he's bailing out when he doesn't have to. He's not seeing targets down the field. And I'm just not sure he's comfortable with what's in front of him at this stage of the season, especially with pressure being thrown at him straight up the middle.
Yeah, it's again, like we've talked about, especially the past couple of weeks, it's just a total the offense as a whole is just not working right now. I think another part of this is I don't think Josh Allen throws that friendly of like a short pass. Like it's not the friendliest. Me and my dad have talked about it. I've talked about it with buddies. I've seen it all over Twitter. He doesn't really throw that friendly of a deep pass or a short pass, which causes, some trouble for the pass catchers that aren't used to it. And again, a lot of these players are new to the team this year. And then on top of it, he just can't hit a deep ball for the life of him. Like the guy, he cannot hit one. So you have to
had that Matt Collins one. I know everyone's saying it was a bad throw. That was a good enough throw. A quality wide receiver tracks that down and makes the play.
Right. The problem is he's a top 2 quarterback. So I think the argument for me would be like, you just need to put, like, if you see Mac win on a double move, that's clean. Just put it where, like, I get it. Like it was the outside. There was no safety over the top in the middle. So you're supposed to, or there was a safety over the top. So you're supposed to put it to the outside. That's where it's supposed to go. So we did make the correct, like, placement of the ball. But at the same time, it's like, come on, the guy was burned. Just loft it up there. If you throw it, you have a rocket arm. Just throw it as high up in the air as you can. There's no one within like 10 yards of the guy, and it would have been completion. So I get the that Matt Collins probably could have tracked that down and should have, but I also think it could have been a better throw from Josh Allen. So again, like we said, he needs to hit on something deep, and that will help this offense kind of open things up, and that'll open everything underneath and in the intermediate game that they want to use and utilize in this offense.
And quickly touching on the defense before we get out of here, I don't think there's much to touch on outside of the fact that Johnson trending toward playing, Bernard seemingly good to go, Taylor Rapp is cleared concussion protocol, so he'll return this weekend. The 2 absences have been Miller and Ed Oliver. In Oliver's absence, like I said, it would hurt, but it's not like he's playing at 2023 level. So if you get Austin Johnson back, if Dwayne Carter continues his progression, I think you can kind of stem the tide in that regard. But the Bills need to get more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Greg Rousseau, and not only pressure, they need to sack the quarterback the way they were to begin the season. I know you lose Von Miller. That's a big piece. He was producing before he went out, albeit in a limited role. Greg Rousseau, I think, finished the game against the Texans with 6 pressures, didn't come away with a sack. Ajay Epinesa really has left me uninspired to begin this season. For the Bills defense to take that next step, although they've been very good for the most part this season, they need to put forth more consistent pressure. And whether it's dialing up those blitz packages that Bobby Babich has done at times this season, or whether it's Greg Rousseau or Ajay Epinesa taking another step, something needs to happen with this pressure group to down the quarterback more often and make things more difficult for opposing passers.
100% spot on with the defensive assessment there. Totally agree. I think with this defensive line, I'm never getting excited about the defensive line again until they can do it against these AFC like contenders, right? These teams that can win in the trenches, these teams that dominate. You look at the Chiefs and what they do to the Bills defensive line every single season. It's just been pure domination besides that one game Von Miller played and, forced that pressure late on Mahomes and Taron Johnson came away with it. It's been pure domination from the Chiefs, the Ravens, when the Colts had Jonathan Taylor, that Colts game a couple of years ago. And I get it. It happens. And they weren't really a contender, but you get the point. I think this Bills defensive line needs to step up and rise to the occasion. They're going to have success against Tennessee. They probably will. They're probably going to have success against Seattle and these teams, but they need to step up in the big moment. Like you mentioned, not really inspired with Ajay Epinesa. Greg Rousseau is very good at getting pressure and setting the edge, but he needs to finish more. And like John Roberts says here, he agrees with us, Alex. Greg Rousseau and Ajay Epinesa need to step up for this team to have success. So it comes down to the pass rush first and foremost. And then I think the linebackers are playing fine. Dorian Williams is all over the place. Yes, he's going to miss some open field tackles, and he's learning along the way too. It's his second year in this system, but he didn't play a snap last year, really. I mean, just a handful of snaps. So I think the secondary, I think the DeMar Hamlin situation, Aaron Quinn had a great point. And Aaron Quinn's actually been, I want to shout him out real quick because he was the one that put out like the Josh Allen criticism when all that stuff came out. And he was kind of like, it's okay to criticize Josh and like still love him at the same time, Bills fans. And like, that's kind of how like I view it as well. Like, I think that's a reasonable take. Like, you are allowed to criticize Josh Allen. It's not always just the pass catchers. It's not always just the offensive line or that. So I think he made a good point there. And then with the safety position, like you said, DeMar Hamlin, he is a serviceable player. He has the experience. So I don't see him really going anywhere. And then hopefully with Taylor Rapp clearing concussion protocol and him being back, the secondary continue to play at an elite level that they've been through the first 4 or 5 weeks.
So to wrap things up and bring us back to the beginning, Justin asks, do you guys see Khalil Shakir playing on Monday? From my perspective, I do not see Shakir, Oliver, or James Cook suiting up on Monday. AJ, do you see it the same way?
Yeah, probably. I mean, if I had to rank them, I think that I don't think there's a way that Oliver plays. I would probably say I would probably say it just based off like my intuition or my guess. They get an extra day of rest Sunday. Shakir out there today looked decent enough for me to maybe have some hope. Like if there was one guy, that it would potentially be Shakir to be out there on Monday. But I think all three, like you said, unlikely to play on Monday based on what we've seen so far.
And how confident are we entering this Monday? As CPK asks, entering the season, concern was with Bass, but now the concern is with, he says Tom B, but I think he means Joe B, and the offense, too predictable. It has been predictable the last 2 weeks. Last week, especially the running on first down, I think you make a good point with the play action. I think they need to utilize that more so on first down in order to kind of change the look and change what the defense is going to expect, and maybe you get more out of those first down runs when you use them. But just your overall confidence level entering this weekend.
I mean, it's the Jets. I wouldn't say like I'm overly confident, but I've also watched the Jets every week, and they've looked very bad. They got a lot of moving pieces there. Albridge taking over the head coaching, promoted the defensive coordinator. Now they got a new offensive play caller. He's slipping my mind right now, but Nathaniel Hackett will not be.
Todd Downing is the new offensive play caller.
Yeah. So they promoted the passing game coordinator, Todd Downing. I mean, it's interesting. I in my preview article that will come out this week on the Daily News, I kind of wrote about like the perception from fans about the when they fire a coach, kind of really rallies the team up and makes them good. I just used the example last year when Josh McDaniels got fired. Antonio Pierce took over that week, and they played on Thursday night, and he won 30-6 on Thursday Night Football. So it is a real thing. I mean, how confident am I out of 10? Probably a 5. I could see this really going either way, but I think with how bad the Jets offense has been, it gives me a little bit more confidence that this Bills defense can really kind of control this game and take one and steal one from the Jets on the road.
And I tweeted it earlier, the Jets going through a coaching change, a change in offensive play caller, their 40-year-old quarterback dealing with multiple injuries. The Bills can't lose on Monday, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it a little sad. It's satire, but it's really, you're right. Like that shows, I think that tweet right there, Alex, should tell you about like your confidence level as well. I think it's like, you think all these things, you've watched the Jets every week and you see, Aaron Rodgers out there running for his life, and it's not been great, but at the same time, the Bills the last 2 weeks haven't, gotten the job done either. And they have a bad history with this Jets team, especially on the road. So it's going to be up in the air. Hopefully if they lose it, man, it's going to be a lot of panic from these Bills fans.
Before we get out of here, we'll link our friends at Forefathers Organics in Dansville.
Unlock the power of nature with Forefathers Organics, your premium CBD store. We offer the highest quality CBD and hemp products to liberate your mind, body, and soul, helping you live happy and free. Our mission is driven by excellence and transparency, using cutting-edge scientific methods to combat stress and target issues at their source. From potent ingestible CBD to soothing topicals, all our products are USDA certified organic. Discover all natural wellness from farm to table. Visit forefathersorganics.com for more information.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.